lot of the topics that we've been getting into throughout the last, I don't even know how many weeks now, have been revolving around race in America, policing in America. Earlier this week, we had Reggie Dial from the organization 100 Black Men of West Texas on the program to give sort of his perspective and a perspective on race and race relations in Lubbock and relations with the police. And joining us here on the phones today, been looking forward to visiting with our next guest, the Chief of Police here in Lubbock, Texas, Chief Floyd Mitchell. Good morning, sir. How are you today?
Good morning, Chad. I'm doing fine. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Appreciate you joining us. And I guess we'll start off just with your general view of everything that's been going on as far as policing and the protest and the demonstrations. When you're, I guess sitting down at your desk or you're out and about and you're just kind of looking at what's going on in America, what are your thoughts?
Oh, wow. That is a very broad and open-ended question there, Chad. There's a lot going on in America right now that has to do with policing and its relationship with its community in general, but specifically with its black community or African-American community. There's a lot that needs to be looked at. There's a lot that needs to be addressed. And with the death of George Floyd, it has provided a window for these very difficult conversations to be had, and hopefully some true reform in policing and how we police our minority communities.
Do you think some of the message or I guess the original intent, which, the death of George Floyd horrified everybody, and the initial outrage afterwards and the initial conversation was about police reforms and what can be done. Do you worry that message has been diluted or lost with everything else that we're seeing? In Seattle, you've got people taking over streets and putting in their own autonomous zones. You've got people talking about defunding and abolishing police. Do you worry, just as a police officer, as a chief of police, do you worry about the messaging getting lost?
I think that's an important piece that we all have to worry about. In the conversations that I have had with my colleagues and Gene Ellis, the president of the Texas Police Chief Association, we had a Zoom call last week with a lot of the chiefs across the state of Texas, and we collectively are talking about keeping the issues on policing and the reforms that are necessary for that. But yes, you do have those segments of the society that want to use this for their own political aspirations.
When it comes to reforms, what reforms do you think are needed in policing?
Well, I think there's two separate paths. One, I think we need to truly look at our relationship with our community and understanding how they want to be policed. And I think it's really important for people to understand that the way we police in Texas is different than the way they police in California or Seattle, and that comes from those communities or those tribes or those cities, and they identify and they elect city officials and governments to represent them and communicate how that particular community wants to be policed. So it's not a one-size-fits-all, and I know there's some conversations out there about a general or across-the-board policing reform to where everyone does things the same. Well, in some states, marijuana is legal. In other states, it's not. So you just can't have a one-size-fit-all policing model because the people in certain communities don't want some things and some people in other communities do. So I think it's important for, as we talk about reform, we talk about what does the local policing community want to have and how do they want to be policed. The other track that I think is important that I think that all of us in law enforcement and the administration and executive positions don't want to get lost is the ability for our departments to separate ourselves from the bad actors. And I think that is a key piece that we are looking at here, that I am looking at here. And I say that with the understanding that I want to protect my employees. I want them to have a due process, and I want them to not come to work wondering whether or not they're going to have their job. But there are instances to where you have repeatedly underperformers or bad actors, and some of the processes that are in place right now really hinder the chief's ability to separate that person from the police department. And I think you see that time and time again when we come into instances like we're experiencing right now, to where you see that this person has been disciplined multiple times, and the chief has probably attempted to fire this person, but there is an administrative procedure there that limits that chief's ability to do that. Or there's what we call splitting the baby. The arbitrator says, well, I want to continue to be hired by the police officers organization to arbitrate these things, but I also want the city to, continue to hire me as well. So I will, as opposed to giving the person 10 days, I'll say, yes, he needs to be disciplined, but maybe he only needs 3 days. So, yes, your discipline went through, but it wasn't what the chief wanted or the organization wanted. So you run into that quite a bit.
Visiting with Chief of Police Floyd Mitchell here on the Chad Hasty Show. How would you describe, just in the time that you've been Chief of Police here in Lubbock, are there major reforms needed inside the police department here? Or are we pretty good right now in Lubbock, Texas?
I think we are really good here in Lubbock, Texas. Is there always opportunities to improve our organization and how we do business? Absolutely. But when you look at the overall organizational structure of the Lubbock Police Department, the training that goes on, the TCOL certification, or Texas Commission on Law Enforcement certification for law enforcement officers in the state of Texas. When I look at my command staff, when I look at my supervisory staff, we have a good police department. Coming in from the outside, you see things that maybe those that grew up in the organization have not seen or experienced. So, during my last six plus months here, we've talked about those things, and we've made some incremental changes in regards to how we operate, and really my big thing that I think I've brought to the organization is process, making sure that we have the processes in place to identify when we have problem officers, or how we are looking at different functions of the police department. I reiterate process quite a bit to the folks that see and interact with me each and every day.
Chief, we have to take a break. Are you good to go for one more segment?
Absolutely, sir.
Okay, great. We're going to place you on hold. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with the Chief of the Lubbock Police Department, Floyd Mitchell, here on the Chad Hasty Show. Back on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO, we have Chief of Police here in Lubbock, Floyd Mitchell, joining us here on the Chad Hasty Show. And, Chief, again, thank you for coming on. Earlier in the week, I had Reggie Dial, who I know you know, from 100 Black Men of West Texas, on to talk about, these issues and race relations in Lubbock. And one of his views is that, they want to continue the conversation, and they want to have a conversation about, about policing and everything here in Lubbock. When it comes from a police point of view, what do you think that conversation looks like? And how do you think police, not only here in Lubbock, but overall in the U.S., what can police need to do, or what can they do to reach out more to the black communities?
Well, I think it starts in an environment that is non-confrontational. And I hope we're able to develop that through our patrol division stations and having our monthly meetings to where we go over the crime stats for those particular patrol division stations. And after we go over what's been happening in your community for that month, let's sit down and have some genuine conversations over our relationship and how we are interacting. And that's one of the keys that I believe is important is for my police officers here to understand that when we come into contact with someone, whether it's a call for service or whether it's a traffic stop or whether it's a pedestrian stop, we stop someone on a call for service, is treating everyone with dignity and respect, no matter their socioeconomic status in the community, no matter their race, color, or creed, and understanding that we have more in common than we do in our differences. So I believe when we open these patrol division stations and there's some place located inside that community that we can come to and have these conversations is going to be very important.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the other side to this, and you don't always hear this from the national side, in the national media, you always hear the questions of what do the police need to do better? What do the police need to do to reach out more? Is there an opposite side of that where communities need to do more to reach out to police and humanize officers?
I believe so. As a police officer working a beat, you'd be in a store grabbing, a candy bar and a Coke or a bottle of water or something, and a parent would walk around the corner, and their child would be, not behaving the way it should be. And I can't tell you how many times a parent, looked at me and said, hey, if you don't act right, I'm going to tell that police officer right there. And we have to change that conversation to where we are communicating to some of our kids that, hey, the police officers are the boogeyman. We're not. And I would stop right then and there, and I would drop down to my knee, and I would tell that kid, hey, I'm not going to come and get you. I'd have a conversation with that child because I think our children, especially now, our children are paying attention to what's going on across the United States. We have these smartphones in our kids' hands, and they have access to a lot of information. We have to make sure that we're having these conversations with our young folks. We're having these conversations with the adults to understand that, hey, we're here as your partner to help solve issues. We're not here to come and get you or anything like that. And I think that's one of the things that we have to make sure that we're communicating to our public, and our public truly understands and communicates to their family members and their friends.
When we had Reggie on earlier this week, he brought up the issue of when he's pulled over, or if he's pulled over, he gets that worried feeling. And we had some text messengers who were coming in going, hey, I'm white, I get worried too when I'm pulled over. And where Reggie was coming from, he said, hey, what you worry about is maybe getting a ticket. I worry about losing my life. When you hear that conversation, what goes through your mind?
I can't argue that conversation. Each individual person and how they feel when they get pulled over is genuine to them. I can tell you, as the chief of police, about 12 months ago, I got pulled over by a DPS trooper because I was passing someone as I was coming over a hill because they were towing something and going real slow, and I was speeding. And I got pulled over, and I got nervous because, I was like, oh, man, what did I do? And like I said, I knew I'd speed up a little bit to pass someone, but I think everyone gets nervous. But I do think those in the minority community, Black, Hispanic community, we do worry a little bit more to wonder if, hey, am I just going to get a ticket? Or is this going to go to, hey, I want to search your car, hey, I want to get out of the car, all of those things, because of what we have experienced in the media, what we see in the media. We may not have experienced it ourselves, but when we see it and we hear about it from our friends and from our neighbors, it is a concern. So I don't discount that at all. I think, yes, we all get nervous when those red lights come on behind us, but I also think it's important for us to understand that in some of the other communities, when you have bad actors or bad police officers who treat people differently because of their race or because of their socioeconomic status. Because I don't think it's all race. I think it's also depending on where you are within the city and what you're driving and all that stuff. A lot plays into it. So we cannot discount the feelings of others in regards to that. We just have to sit down and talk through those and share those experiences so everyone understands that, hey, my experience has been something different than you have experienced. It's not to say that, I'm being hypersensitive or something else. It just means we've had different experiences and we've had different exposures.
Do you worry that, as, reforms are made or reforms are talked about or pressure from national media is put on police officers, do you worry that officers would second guess themselves and that would lead to bad circumstances for police officers?
I do. I know there's a lot of conversation right now regarding police reforms, regarding qualified immunity. And right now, when you look at the Lubbock Police Department, we have over 64 police officers that could leave right now. They could walk out the door. They are vested, and they can walk out the door. And you hear those conversations in the halls about, hey, if I am trying my best to do what is right and what is proper based on the laws that are on the book, and I make a mistake, then I could lose everything. I think these have to be some very serious conversations because, again, those communities are the ones, and that those political leaders are the ones who said, hey, this is how we want our community policed, and we're asking you as a police officer to police our community the way we have set. Oh, but now you made a mistake, and all agreements are off right now, so you're going to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. You don't have any immunity. You and your family is going to lose everything. I think those conversations, some more broader conversations, have to be held before we enact some of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. We're visiting with the Chief of Police, Floyd Mitchell, here on the Chad Hasty Show. Overall, and there was the walk that I know you participated in, the mayor participated in, I think Senator Perry participated in, with the 100 Black Men of West Texas. Overall, how would you say, relationships are here in Lubbock compared to the national pictures that we see on TV every night?
Again, I would start with, there's always room for improvement. But what we've seen and what we've experienced in Lubbock over the last 2.5 weeks, I think is remarkable. We have shown that, one, we can provide a safe space for our community to demonstrate, to protest, to voice their opinions in a peaceful and respectful manner for all those involved. And I think that's important. I think it says it speaks volumes for our community in regards to their educational level, their understanding of political issues, their understanding of socioeconomic issues. I think there's a lot of work to be done, both in regards to our race relations and also in regards to our socioeconomic conditions here in Lubbock. Earlier this year, the Chamber held a diversity summit, and I tell you, it was one of the neatest events that I have gone to, and I think the whole community understands there's work to be done, and there are a lot of leaders here in this community that are working to make it better in Lubbock. These things take time. They take time, and they take effort, and they take money, and I think we're working toward that here in Lubbock.
Chief of Police for the Lubbock Police Department, Floyd Mitchell, appreciate your time today. I'm glad we had this discussion. I look forward to visiting with you in the future.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. That's the Lubbock Chief of Police, Floyd Mitchell, here on the Chad Hasty Show.